What would you do if your own father tried to kick you out of the house you own? This jaw-dropping Reddit story takes us through a whirlwind of family drama, entitlement, and shocking betrayals. As the main character stands his ground against manipulative relatives, the situation escalates in ways no one could have predicted. Dive into this summary to discover how one man's determination reshaped his family's future and what surprising twists awaited along the way. Let me take you back to where it all began. I had inherited my grandfather's house, a place filled with childhood memories, family traditions, and a deep sense of belonging. After my grandfather passed away, I became the legal owner, but I allowed my father, his new wife, and her daughter to move in. My only conditions were simple and fair. I'd keep my own room, and my grandfather's old office would remain untouched. I thought this would be a way to honor my grandfather's memory while helping my family through a tough time. For a while, things went smoothly. I paid the bills, handled repairs, and never asked for a dime in rent. I believed that generosity and understanding would keep the peace. But I was wrong. Everything changed when my father's stepdaughter announced she was pregnant. Suddenly, my father approached me with a request that sounded more like a demand. He wanted me to give up my room so his stepdaughter could have a bigger space for her baby. At first, I was stunned. Was he serious? This was my home, the one I owned, the one I paid for, the one I had opened to them out of kindness. I calmly explained that I wasn't comfortable giving up my room and reminded him of the agreement we'd made when they moved in. My father, however, wasn't interested in compromise. He insisted that his stepdaughter's needs came first, and that, as the man of the house, he should have the final say. I felt a mix of disbelief and anger. How could my own father, who had tried so hard to support, turn around and treat me like an outsider in my own home? The sense of betrayal ran deep. I tried to reason with him, pointing out that I'd never charged them rent and that I'd always tried to be fair. But he wouldn't listen. He accused me of being selfish and uncaring, twisting the situation to make me look like the villain. The tension in the house grew unbearable. My father's new wife and her daughter sided with him, treating me like an intruder. They started making subtle changes, moving my things, leaving messes in my room, and dropping hints that I should do the right thing for the new baby. It was as if they had forgotten whose name was on the deed. Despite the pressure, I stood my ground. I refused to give up my room or my grandfather's office. I reminded them that I had given them a place to live when they needed it most, and that I deserved respect in my own home. My resolve only seemed to make them angrier, but I knew I couldn't let myself be bullied out of what was rightfully mine. As the tension in the house reached a boiling point, I could feel the atmosphere shift from uncomfortable to outright hostile. My refusal to give up my room and my grandfather's office was met with icy silence, passive-aggressive remarks, and a growing sense that I was no longer welcome in my own home. I tried to keep my head down and stick to my boundaries, but it became increasingly clear that my father and his new family were not going to let this go. Then, one day, everything changed. I came home from work to find that my key no longer worked. Confused and a little panicked, I tried the doorbell, only to be met by my father, who told me without a hint of remorse that he had changed the locks. He said it was for the safety of the baby, and that I would need to find somewhere else to stay for a while. I was stunned. The house was legally mine, and yet, here I was, standing on the porch like an unwelcome guest. I demanded an explanation, but my father doubled down, insisting that his stepdaughter's needs came first, and that I was being unreasonable. He told me to grow up and support the family, as if I hadn't already sacrificed enough. My anger boiled over. I reminded him that I was the owner, that I had let them live there rent-free, and that this was a clear violation of our agreement. He shrugged it off, acting as if he had every right to do what he wanted. Feeling betrayed and powerless, I realized I had to take action. I called a lawyer and explained the situation. My lawyer was shocked by the audacity of my father's actions and assured me that I had every legal right to reclaim my property. With their guidance, I contacted the police and presented all the necessary documents proving my ownership of the house. The next few days were a blur of legal paperwork, tense phone calls, and anxious waiting. Eventually, the police arrived at the house with me, and I watched as my father and his family were served with an eviction notice. The look on his face was a mix of disbelief and indignation. He genuinely seemed to think he could get away with what he had done. But the law was on my side, and there was no arguing with the facts. Once they were gone, I moved back into my home. The place felt different, emptier, quieter, but also safer. I immediately changed the locks and installed security cameras, determined to never let myself be blindsided again. I took some time to clean and repair the damage they had left behind, both physically and emotionally. It was a difficult process, but it also felt like reclaiming a part of myself that I had lost during the ordeal. During this time, girlfriend was a constant source of support. We talked about the future and decided that she would move in with me. Together, we started making plans to build a life in the house that had once been the center of so much conflict. I felt a sense of relief and hope that I hadn't felt in a long time. After reclaiming my house and finally feeling a sense of peace, I hoped that the worst was behind me. My girlfriend and I began settling into our new routine, making the house feel like a true home again. For the first time in months, I could breathe easily. But as I soon learned, my father's sense of entitlement didn't disappear just because he no longer lived under my roof. It started with a phone call around the holidays. My father reached out, not to apologize or make amends, but to inform me that he and his family would be coming over for Christmas. He rattled off a list of foods he expected me to prepare and even sent a wish list of gifts for himself, his wife, and her daughter. The audacity was almost laughable. After everything that had happened, the betrayal, the eviction, the emotional turmoil, he still believed he could waltz back into my life and demand hospitality. I was stunned, but I also felt strangely empowered. The old me might have caved in, desperate to avoid conflict or keep the peace. But now, with the boundaries I'd worked so hard to establish, I knew I had to stand firm. I politely but firmly told my father that he was not welcome to spend Christmas at my house, and that I would not be fulfilling his requests for food or gifts. Predictably, he exploded with accusations, calling me ungrateful and selfish. But I refused to let his words get to me. The holiday drama didn't end there. My father then tried to rope my mother into his schemes, contacting her to ask if she would pay for a lavish European vacation for him and his family. My parents had been divorced for years, and my mother was just as baffled by his entitlement as I was. She shut him down immediately, refusing to entertain his demands or enable his behavior. Despite these rejections, my father continued his campaign of manipulation. He tried to guilt-trip me by bringing up old memories, claiming that I was tearing the family apart by not letting him back into my life. He even went as far as to suggest that I owed him for raising me, and that it was my duty to take care of him now. Each time, I reminded myself of everything I'd been through: the betrayal, the eviction, the emotional manipulation, and stood my ground. Throughout all of this, my girlfriend was my rock. She reminded me that I had every right to set boundaries and protect my own well-being. Together, we created new holiday traditions, inviting friends over and filling the house with laughter and warmth. It was a stark contrast to the tension and chaos of the past, and it made me realize just how much happier and healthier I was without my father's toxic influence. This period taught me a crucial lesson: just because someone is family doesn't mean you owe them access to your life, your home, or your happiness. My father's entitlement knew no bounds, but by refusing to give in, I reclaimed not just my house, but my sense of self. As my girlfriend and I continued to rebuild our lives and create new traditions, I felt the weight of my father's influence gradually lift. I was finally learning to prioritize my own happiness and well-being. But just when I thought the drama was behind me, another unexpected chapter unfolded, one that would test my resolve and sense of justice all over again. My uncle, who owned my grandfather's childhood home, decided it was time to sell. This house held a special place in our family history, and my late grandfather had always hoped it would eventually go to my cousin. When I heard about the sale, I saw an opportunity not just to honor my grandfather's wishes, but also to ensure that the house stayed in the family. After some discussion with my uncle and cousin, I made an offer and was able to purchase the house. It felt like a win for everyone. My cousin was thrilled at the prospect of eventually having the home, and I felt like I was doing something meaningful for my family's legacy. But as always, my father had other ideas. When he found out that the house was up for sale, he immediately assumed he would be the one to buy it. He called me, demanding to know why I hadn't told him about the sale, and insisting that he deserved the house more than anyone else. I calmly explained that I had already purchased it and that it would eventually go to my cousin, just as our grandfather had wanted. My father didn't take the news well. He accused me of stealing the house from him and claimed that I was deliberately trying to cut him out of the family. The entitlement in his voice was unmistakable, but I refused to let it shake me. I reminded him that he had already lost the privilege of living in my other house because of his actions, and that this decision was about honoring our grandfather's wishes, not about him. Things escalated quickly. A few days later, I received an alert from the security cameras I had installed at the new property. To my shock, the footage showed my father attempting to break into the house. He was caught on camera trying to force open a window, clearly believing that if he couldn't have the house legally, he would simply take it by force. I immediately called the police and provided them with the footage. The authorities responded swiftly. My father was arrested and charged with attempted breaking and entering. It was a surreal moment watching my own father face legal consequences for his actions. Part of me felt a deep sadness for how far things had gone, but I also knew that I had done the right thing. For too long, I had allowed his entitlement and manipulation to dictate the course of my life. Now, I was finally drawing a line. After everything that happened with my father, the betrayals, the legal battles, and the emotional roller coaster, I found myself reflecting deeply on what it truly means to have a healthy, respectful family relationship. The ordeal had been exhausting, but it also taught me some of the most important lessons of my life. With my father now facing legal consequences for his actions, I realized it was time to focus on my own future and the relationships that genuinely brought me happiness and peace. Moving forward, I made a conscious decision to distance myself from the toxic dynamics that had defined my family for so long. I stopped feeling guilty for enforcing boundaries and instead started to see it as an act of self-respect. My girlfriend and I poured our energy into making our home a sanctuary, a place free from manipulation, drama, and entitlement. We redecorated, hosted friends, and filled the rooms with laughter and warmth. For the first time, I felt like I was truly living for myself, not just reacting to the chaos around me. My relationship with my girlfriend grew even stronger during this time. She had stood by me through every challenge, offering unwavering support and reminding me of my own worth when I doubted myself. Together, we talked openly about our dreams and the kind of family we wanted to build, one based on mutual respect, trust, and kindness. The contrast between our vision for the future and the dysfunction of my past couldn't have been clearer. I also reconnected with family members who respected my boundaries and shared my values. My cousin, for example, was overjoyed when I told him about my plans for my grandfather's childhood home. We spent weekends working on the house together, reminiscing about our childhoods and honoring our grandfather's memory in meaningful ways. These moments reminded me that family can be a source of strength and joy when it's rooted in genuine care and respect. As for my father, I came to accept that some relationships can't be fixed, no matter how much you wish they could. I stopped trying to change him or win his approval. Instead, I focused on healing from the hurt and building a life that reflected my own values. I learned to forgive not for his sake, but for mine, so I could move forward without bitterness or resentment weighing me down. Looking back, I'm grateful for the lessons this experience taught me. I learned that standing up for myself is not selfish, it's necessary. I discovered the power of saying no and the importance of surrounding myself with people who uplift me rather than drain me. Most importantly, I realized that I have the right to define what family means to me, and that sometimes the family you choose is just as important as the one you're born into.